I watched a short film documentary. I don't know what one calls it, called The Merchants of Light, how the current consciousness is changing the world. And it's this woman who's a scholar, author, and I don't know if she's a researcher. Her name is Betty Kovacs, I believe you pronounce it. And what a wealth of knowledge this woman has, speaking about consciousness, the waves of consciousness over and throughout history, our roots, that lie really in mysticism and scientific mysticism, and really how our true history has been hidden and deleted, and the fall of the feminine, all of these things. It was such a fascinating listen, and I recommend it. You can go onto YouTube and watch it. And so it kind of inspired me to talk about, I've been going on this theme of the feminine, but really, as I've been calling these times the time of remembering who we truly are. And, there's still so many people on this planet that are really suffering because they're away from home, their inner home. So I have, a lot of people that come to me for a relationship. They're single and they want to be in a relationship, but it always comes down to their relationship with themselves. It comes down to this homecoming, returning home to their true, authentic self underneath who they think they should be, their wounds, their belief systems. You've heard me talk about it a million times. But it's interesting that my website went down, and as I'm reconstructing it, I'm really focusing in on this journey very specifically. I might still work with people that are looking for a relationship, but actually this is really a time of creating, cultivating, returning to the purest form of relationship to and with yourself. Because if we want to feel whole again, we have to include all parts. And if we want to feel at peace within ourselves, we actually have to remember who we truly are. So I want to dive deeper into this. And what does all of this mean? What does it look like? And let's just be in the conversation about it. So let's dive in. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. So I want to begin with how we got lost and how we got severed from ourselves and how we got severed from all that is natural and a part of us, how we got severed essentially from our cosmic self, which is really our true self. Right? This is just the outfit. This is the vehicle, as I've talked about in the past. And this is something that Betty was talking about is we used to be in the balance of masculine and feminine, left brain and right brain. And, she studied way back, like scriptures way, 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 way back. Those that were still remain, really that are rooted, everything is rooted in mysticism, and how so much has been altered and rewritten and manipulated. Our whole history has really been manipulated by a very few to control the many, right? And part of this is really unveiling these truths, or these lies, I should say, and returning to, like, she was talking about these, they're almost kind of, you could say, extinct. There's very few of them, this indigenous culture, that they really still had like a very profound relationship, knowledge, communication with the cosmos. And of course, white people looked down upon them like, oh, they're not civilized, when actually they were so wise, they were so connected. And, they probably looked at us as like, a kind of very odd species. So, but this whole, she was saying that in the beginning, like the way that we hear about God and Jesus, which is written by religious people, which is separate, right? It's a different thing, right? From what it truly was in its origins. And she was actually saying that, quote unquote God was masculine and feminine. The god and the goddess, and she was telling about the actual story of Adam and Eve, which was, really fascinating. Again, I would just, if you're inspired or interested in it, it's a good, it's an hour long, and it's really interesting. But so she gives the kind of the mythology around this, and basically the feminine was eradicated by this other being that came in. I forget his name now, and kind of pulled away the feminine and got rid of her, destroyed her, essentially. And what happened to her masculine counterpart, the masculine part of God? And in the loss and the severing of his counterpart of the feminine, he became he became angry, and basically what she was saying is that when the left brain is not in harmony with the right brain, it wants to control everything. It wants to have power over everything. It's too much in the left. It's too much in the masculine part of the brain. And, there's a reason why we're very symmetrical, right? We have 2 hands and 2 arms and 2 legs and 2 feet and, 2 shoulders and 2 ears and 2 eyes. It's like everything is beautifully symmetrical. But it's like, imagine if you're constantly just hopping on your left foot, or if you're kind of limping, you're not putting the other foot down, you're going to really go off kilter. And when we're off kilter is when we start to come out in all of these, let's call it shadowy behaviors, not really in the divine, pure essence of what that aspect is. It reminds me of when I was in my early 20s and I left the ballet because of an injury, and I took kind of a summer off. It was the first summer I'd had off, like since I was a kid, basically. And I really read a lot. I meditated a lot. I read a lot. That was, I would say, the beginning of my, really diving into my quote unquote spiritual journey, which is just journey into self. Really looking at who am I? What am I doing here? What does this mean? Who am I without the identity of being a dancer? I talked about that before. And I read a book called The Alphabet versus the Goddess. And what the author was talking about is how with the invention of the word, we used to communicate in symbols, which is much more right brain, right? It's much more artistic. And the moment that the written word came in, which had a lot to do with the church and all of these things, we started to move away from the right brain. And so he speaks about how this was the beginning of the loss of the feminine, or the loss of that interconnection and harmony, the relationship between left brain and right brain, masculine and feminine. So there's so much knowledge out there. And I feel grateful that I was curious enough when I was young to start looking at this. And as I've shared before, I had a very strong Buddhist practice in my 20s, but I really kind of hit a wall with it, ran into a dead end when I felt very strongly this is very masculine and it's really missing the feminine. It's really missing what is the wisdom of emotions, what is the wisdom of the feminine, what are the characteristics of the feminine, which are very different from the masculine, not better or worse, but different, and both are needed. So the severing from ourselves, if we are both masculine and feminine, left and right brain, when we are removing or hiding or neglecting or exiling a whole half of ourselves, it's no surprise that we have felt so discombobulated and almost under a certain kind of duress because we're outside of home. And I know I've been talking a lot about this, but I'm talking about it because it's so vitally important. Vitally important. Until we integrate both of these parts of ourselves, until we come back into that balance of left and right brain, masculine, feminine, until we really come into right relationship with our humanity and our divinity, our soul and our human self, everything is going to continue to be kind of wonky and off kilter. And if you're following the kind of the talk and the journey and the process of ascension, or whatever you want to call it, awakening, really, this is why I say it's a homecoming. It's a returning to who you've always been. And I'm going to repeat it again and again and again, because this isn't a journey outside of yourself. This isn't you looking for some answer outside of yourself to finally give you the clarity to make you feel like you're good enough and you're lovable and you're worthy and you're significant. You're not waiting for something to happen in your life. And it's hard, folks. It's hard, right? If you're yearning for something and you're waiting for something, it's hard. It's hard not to go, oh, I will be happy when. Because the truth is, will it enhance our happiness? Of course. Will it offer fulfillment or inspiration or engagement? Of course. But what we're really having to face with courage is we cannot continue to live lives where the outside is a means of filling the void on the inside. We can't do it anymore, because this is not an outside-in process. It's an inside-out process. What's really beautiful, I just finished reading the series of the Chronicles of Narnia to my daughter. I read them when I was younger, and now I've just read them to her. And the last book, wow. If there was just one book that I would recommend you reading in that series, it's the last one. Now, a lot of it probably wouldn't make sense, but it is so metaphoric for what we're going through now. Like, it was so ahead of its time, although I'm feeling that we've been going through this for like hundreds, if not thousands of years, right? So in the book, it kept on saying at the end, further in and further up, further in and further up. And basically it was like they were told to kind of, where Aslan had told them to go when they've come into this land, is like to go further in and further up. They're going into the land and to higher heights. And to me, this is so metaphoric of, let's do it backwards. If you want to rise up and you want to ascend and you want to connect to your divinity, you have to go in. We're not going to find it outside. And what was so beautiful is they were saying, as you go further in, it gets larger and larger and larger. They would come into this, like, through these gates, and then it was like the space all of a sudden seems so much larger when you were inside of it than when you were outside of it. And to me, this is really like, when you go in, there's an entire universe that opens up. Essentially, there's no inside and outside, because it's all kind of one and the same. But it's like we have been living in such a teeny tiny world, looking just outside of us. And I mean, there's so much to see and discover and explore outside of us, right? It's like beautiful. But actually, the profundity, the depth, the vastness, the infiniteness of going inside of ourselves, that is the portal, as I spoke about last week. It is the very portal that opens up into everything, into the multidimensionality of everything. So it was just such a beautiful, it just felt so beautiful to be reading that out loud to my daughter. The metaphor, the symbolism of it all was so beautiful, and really just the returning to home. And that's the true, this is the dream. We're in the dream. So one of the things that I know that Betty talks about is, like, she calls this the divine game. And, I know that I'm speaking in I don't like any of these labels. I really don't. But I know that I'm speaking in more metaphysical, spiritual terms. But like, the reason why I'm reconstructing and refocusing my work is because actually this for me is really at the core. It's not dogmatic. I've never really been one to follow groups or dogmas or gurus or all of this. I don't want to be that. I would never even call myself like a teacher or anything. Like, I'm purely, if anything, a guide, and beneath that, a fellow human being that is just going on this journey just as you are, as we all are. Because I think as the feminine comes in, it's not about hierarchy. It's not top-down systems. It's the circle, And sure, you could say that there are different souls, some we like to call it old soul or new soul or young soul. I think it comes down to just souls that have had a certain kind of experience and therefore wisdom. But we're really here to share and support one another. Like that's just has to be the way that we move forward, and getting ourselves out of this idea that there are other people that you put up on a pedestal and you look to them and you think that they're better than you. That's just such a fallacy, Yes, there might be, as they're called ascendant masters that come down, and there are these really incredible beings that are an embodiment of a very high consciousness from a higher dimension. But that they're true and real when they are saying that they are one of you. They're not like, I'm the guru and I'm the teacher and you should bow down to me and I have all these rules. Buddha, Jesus, they never had any rules. It was the organizations around them that created these rules, right? I think one of the things that we're doing right now is we're fine-tuning. We're fine-tuning our own inner knowing, our gnosis, as I've talked about. We're fine-tuning our intuition. We're fine-tuning our own wisdom. Like if there's something that I want to really support you in this moment is you have wisdom, trust it. We have been told for so long through our education system, through parenting even, through this top-down hierarchical structure systems that have been around for thousands of years. We have been told you don't know, that someone else, the expert, the authority knows better than you. I mean, the most ridiculous example of this that I remember both made me laugh and made me so angry was when I became a mother. There's a woman called, oh God, what is her name now? I've literally probably erased her from my mind. I'm another name is coming through, but it's not her. So sorry, if I can remember it, I'll say it. But she basically was the quote unquote expert of raising babies, but she was never a mother herself. She was a nanny, but not only was she a nanny, she boasted about being a nanny to something like 300 children. And I'm like, if you've been a nanny for 300 children, it means you've never had the intimate relationship with one. And if you've never gone through pregnancy and labor and birth and all of that stuff afterwards, how can you be an expert? So she was the one that was the advocate for leave your child to cry. You're over pampering them if you go to them, and you're going to make them spoilt. And also, if you're a woman, 2-3 weeks after, you should shave your legs and put on lingerie and play, I mean, I was like, is this for real? And in the UK, she was one of like the top people, experts. And I just thought this is the removal of the feminine. This is when we go into such left brain, linear, non-emotional, non-heart. So, okay, this weaves into heart, and this is what Betty was talking about. When we come into our power is when we marry left brain with right brain and we drop into heart brain. And we have the coherence between heart brain, I will add gut brain, and left and right brain. We feel severed because we literally have fragmented ourselves. We're not in wholeness, not because we're not lovable and we're not good enough and we don't have the partner, we don't have the job, or we don't have the house, or we don't have the success, that's not wholeness. Wholeness is the integration of all natural parts of our being. When they are integrated, when they're in union and harmony and they're speaking to one another, right? Left brain, right brain talking to each other. Brain, heart, gut talking to each other. All the chakras in conversation with one another. rooting ourselves to the earth and connecting ourselves to the divine. What's amazing about being human is that we're literally this like center station. It sounds terrible, but we are the center station where we're taking in all of this different information. We are part of Earth Gaia, and we're part of divine source, and we're human, and we're spirit, and we're the in-between point. You might be going, Corinne, this isn't helping me to practically learn how to be a better person, and how do I deal with my emotions and my thoughts and get over my wounds and my patterning and my behavior and my beliefs, and how do I get the boyfriend or the girlfriend or those are all valid, right? And I have talked about those things. But if we don't come back to the core, we're just going to continue replicating stories and narratives and experiences and realities of all of that stuff, continuing to kind of, repeat again and again and again and again. Same patterns of relationship, same patterns with our work and our career and our, potential and all of that stuff. I want to go deeper, because now we're ready for it. We're actually ready for it. I grew up in San Francisco Bay Area and I grew up in a very kind of conscious environment and, meditation and talks on consciousness and soul and all of these things. I wasn't religious. I wasn't any one thing. It was just really about awareness and consciousness. And I remember when I'd kind of go outside of the Bay Area, especially if I came to Europe, there was no talk of that. I remember being like 12, 13, 14, 15, even, into my later teens and early 20s, where I was like, oh, I can't talk about this with anyone out here. You would be considered weird. And now it's in common language. I mean, I've even seen it with some of the clients that I've worked with over the years, or even some of the friends that I have, or some of the people that follow me online, to witness the only thing that we call it in our society is like a spiritual awakening. It's so beautiful. It's so exciting. But one thing I want to say about spiritual awakening, because it seems very like almost grandiose is the word that comes to mind. It's not a big thing. Like, again, when we think of enlightenment, it's always just something that I have to reach, I have to climb 1,000 steps in Tibet and go, meditate at the top of a mountain in a nappy in the ice. and then I will be enlightened. Sure, that could be a pathway, sure. But as I said last week, the path is going in. That's it. It's right here on your doorstep. You don't have to travel anywhere. It's literally right here. And so a spiritual awakening isn't some big fluffy thing that you need to go to like Burning Man for, go to do 10 million ayahuasca ceremonies or, whatever. You can do any and all of those things. But it's really as simple as, what if you were to just wake up in the morning and ground yourself in your body and sit up and do some breathing and connect into yourself. Don't even worry about meditating, right? Because then we get into our head. Oh my God, I'm having thoughts. Oh my God, I'm distracted. No, I'm doing it wrong. Then the shame comes in. Oh, I'm not good enough. No, just be. Just be. Just sit there. Feel. Feel your body. Breathe into your body. Notice your thoughts. Notice your feelings. One of the biggest things that I really have always enjoyed doing when I'm working with people is what I call connecting them to their essence, which I've described as the canvas that's behind the painting. The paint on the canvas are your emotions, your thoughts, your experiences, your personality, what you move through in your human life. The canvas is the essence of who you are. It is your soul. That never goes away. And that's always there, no matter what is happening, it's always there behind everything. It is the foundation. Without that, you wouldn't be able to paint. It'd be just like air, right? So I love this, okay, get to know what is the essence of who you are. It's an energy. It's a feeling. You can feel energy. And when you settle into it and you stay long enough in a meditation or in a, I don't know what to call it. Again, these labels can have connotations, but when you're just sitting with yourself with your eyes closed and you're feeling into your body and your feelings and your sensations and your thoughts, and you're just staying and you're sitting with it and you're staying long enough, and the sand settles to the bottom of the sea and the water isn't so murky, it kind of calms down, then we begin to get closer to the canvas. And we get to feel what that feels like. And my experience of it, and I can't say what your experience of it is, but mine is, it's like soft and it's so loving and it's really beautiful and blissful, and it warms my heart and it makes me feel kind of all tingly on the outside. And then if I breathe into it, I can feel the expansion of it and I can feel myself getting so big. I used to do this visualization as part of the kind of manifesting your soulmate course that I used to do, where you really go from your small self just sitting here and you expand beyond the borders of your skin, beyond the four walls of the room, beyond the building, beyond the block, beyond the town, city, beyond the country, beyond the continent, beyond the earth, beyond the stars and the universe, beyond to the furthest beyond that you can get to, which is infinite. And what you're doing is you're literally expanding yourself to be as vast as you innately are. You are that. You are that big. And then you bring all of that in, you draw it back in through the same route that you went out, and you bring it in, down in through the crown of your head as a little seed that rests in the middle of your body, your heart. It's like a little golden seed of light. And you get to expand into that whenever you want, because you are that. It's so important for us to remember who we truly are. It's so important for us to integrate all parts of ourselves from a much deeper level. Of course, I talk a lot about accept your emotions, your feelings, because that is a step in the direction of integrating the energies of who you are. So one of the things that Betty was talking about, I'm like, Betty, as if she's my friend and I've had a cup of tea with her. Good old Betty. Is she was talking about, I've lost my train of thought now. She was talking about how this is the fifth Renaissance. What we're going through right now is the fifth Renaissance, that we have tried this kind of ascension throughout time. So there's been the expansion of consciousness and then the censoring of it and the killing off and the deleting of scripts and all of these things. And then there's, been another wave that comes in, and there's the expansion of consciousness, and then there's the censoring and the killing off. So she's saying this is the fifth time. All attempts before have failed, and it's okay. It's just a part of the evolution, right? The consciousness evolution, this divine game that we're in. But she really feels like this time, let's see if we can actually really expand into the consciousness that we are, the consciousness that is changing the world, the consciousness that's going to bring us into higher frequencies, that's going to bring us into these states of love and compassion and expansion and joy and bliss, and that we can let go of the paradigm of fear and suffering and war and division. That's part of the censoring. That's part of what happens to the brain when it is solely in the left brain, not in partnership with the right brain, and disconnected entirely from the heart. This is what happens. And isn't it interesting that, censorship is a big thing right now? Whenever consciousness expands, fear and control and the unintegrated self will try to have power over it. It will try to kill it. It will try to stifle it. It will try to literally rid it. So we've seen this cycle, this game, just come around again and again and again. And this is why we say history repeats itself. But now I feel like there's really an opportunity to say, you know what, no more. We've played this game. Enough, right? More and more people are seeing how ridiculous it is to continue with these wars and continue with left and right and, the whole politics, and when you start to see the absurdity of certain things, there's all this talk about environmentalism. Oh, you have to watch your carbon footprint and this and that and the other. But here's the thing. When you're trying to look at nature as something that's quantifiable, that you need to fix through numbers and through charts and through this and that and the other, you're outside of your own home. Because when you recognize that you are nature, you are a part of nature, and Earth is housing us here. Environmentalism, which I don't like the term even anymore, but really at its heart is love the earth as a part of you. Love nature as a part of you. Make sure that you are fighting for the clean air and the clean water and healthy soil because it's a part of you and you love it as you love yourself, as you love your family. That's what should be the focus. None of this like computer graph shit. You take care of what you love. You care for what you love. And you love what is close to your heart. I think it was Zach Bush that was saying, in the dictionary that the definition of nature is that which is not man. And he said, boop, that was the end of it. When you see that nature is separate from you, you're not going to care about it in the same way. Now, it's really easy to say there's a lot of people that don't care about themselves, but it's because they're coming from an unintegrated place where they've fallen into that, manipulation and brainwashing of you're not good enough and you're not whole as you are and you have no inner authority or wisdom or knowledge, and do what you're told and stay in line and, stay in this box. And we're breaking free. We're breaking free. And how do you break free? You go in, further in and further up. I didn't even realize that actually I've been doing this intuitively for probably 20 years now. Whenever I do this grounding, I always kind of end by putting my right hand on my heart and my left hand on my womb, you could say. And I was listening to this talk with this man who's Hawaiian, and he knows a lot about the mythology and the ancestry and the language. But one of the things that he was talking about, he guided us at the beginning of this talk through this little meditation. And it was really this bowing down to like taking your right hand, which is the masculine side of the body, and putting it to your heart, that this was the masculine center, the verb, the doing. And then the left hand is the feminine. The left is the side of the feminine, and bringing it to the womb. And that is the feminine, the point of all creation. And this, alignment between the two, the conversation between the two, the noun and the verb, as he called it. And it's so interesting that I've placed my hands there just naturally, intuitively every single day for, I kid you not, at least 20, 22 years maybe. But I've really been intentionally bringing it into my meditation, my being with myself in the morning, and really feeling that the inner masculine and inner feminine is sitting within myself. And the moment you have intention and you bring your awareness and you feel into the energy, it feels so profound. All of a sudden, it's like I really feel both sides of my body. I feel myself in my center. And then there is this kind of aligning and coming together where it's like you feel full. So whatever it is that you're yearning for on the outside, if it's partnership, if it's something to do with your career, your passion, your home, that can still exist. But that feeling that creates kind of like a little bit of a crack or a gaping hole or void, when you connect to the inner masculine and inner feminine at the same time within your body, and you can feel that they are there as like the god and goddess or king and queen or whatever you want to call it, then all of a sudden it's like it's like all the cracks get sealed and we come into cohesion. We come into that kind of wholeness, because often that's the part is like, yeah, we feel fragmented and we feel severed when we have excluded parts of ourselves. And when you bring them in and you see that they're in partnership together, that's the feeling of wholeness. And when there's the removal of judgment, right? When there's no judgment. So there's so much to say about this. What is the invitation today? I want you to feel in right now. And I want you to tune into what do you feel is missing? What do you feel is missing inside of you? Or what is missing in your life? And when you feel into this feeling of missing, like you might have it attached to something, right? I don't have the man, I don't have the woman, I don't have the home, I don't have the career, I don't have this, I don't have that, I want this, I want that. That's fine. Those are all fine. But I want you to focus on the feeling of missing, not having, wanting, the lack of not having that, the scarcity of not having that. And I want you to notice, does it make you feel less whole? Does it make you feel like, oh, there's still something that you need to do to complete yourself, to be whole, to be better than you are? And I want you to just put your hand on your heart and your other hand on your belly. And I want you to bring your focus in towards your heart and your belly. And I want you to go in. I want you to go in, and I want you to, you're not getting rid of that missing or the part that feels like it needs to improve or be better. I want you to bring that in as if you're embracing that. And I want you to hold it in your heart and in your belly, in your body, in your core, and include it. But I want you to see if you can just breathe into who you are right now in this moment, however your state of being is. It doesn't matter if you're feeling blissful or if you're sitting here crying, if you're in despair or if you're in excitement. It doesn't matter. Wherever you are in this moment, you are perfect just here, just now, just as you are. It's enough. You're enough. And I want you to breathe into your body and feel your breath imbue every part of your body, all of it. Feel it as if it's swirling throughout your entire body and being, as if it's light. The breath is light. The breath is source, God, creation, universe, soul, your higher self, spirit, love, consciousness. Let it fill your entire body. And let it give you the message, send you the message that you are whole just as you are. And whatever part feels missing, let that be an invitation to go further in and further up, deeper in and further up. We need to get used to just being, and that's enough. We have been on doing on steroids. We have been the hamster on the wheel for too long. It's time to be still. Still doesn't mean stagnant. Still is very alive. Being is very alive. It's actually more alive than the doing, because if doing isn't married with being, it's outside in. It's superficial. When we connect into being and then we do from that place, whoa, we're powerful. We're really powerful. And if you want to change the world, and if you want to come into wholeness, and if you want to find inner peace, we have to go in. We have to integrate all of these parts. And this is why I say it's a remembering. It's all already there. So you might have to sift through the layers to clear up the gunk that is keeping you from seeing who you are. remembering who you are, feeling into who you are. That it's nothing that you need to go out there to find. It's not out there. And what you do in the world should ultimately be an expression of who you authentically are, having this unique experience as your own personal, private little angle of consciousness. So I'm just here to remind you. And we're here to remind each other, and we're here to come into the circle and hold hands. Doesn't have to be some like kumbaya, my love, hippie thing. We're here to hold hands and really like, are we willing to say like, okay, I'm putting 2 feet in. I'm in it. I'm in it with you. Let's do it. Let's do it this time. You know, as people say, it's absolutely possible to create heaven on earth. This realm holds both heaven and hell. Those aren't realms outside of us. It's a state of being. It's an experience right here. You can either be in heaven or you can be in hell. And I don't mean heaven by ignoring and neglecting all of the shadow. You know me. You know that you have to go through the underworld before you can really come out into the outer world and see the light of all things. And then all of a sudden the colors are brighter and the smells are sweeter and the sounds are more profound. Because we have to liberate ourselves from any ways in which we make ourselves contract, and any ways we make ourselves small, and not by judging them, but by embracing and including them and alchemizing and transmuting them. We're learning that we're alchemists. We're learning that we're creators. We're co-creators. One of the things as I go through the chakras and I kind of say an I am statement that relates to that chakra, the second chakra is like, I am the creator and co-creator of my reality. I'm co-creating this with the mystical, exquisite, mysterious divine. And I'm a part of that. We got to bring back magic, right? And actually, one of the things that Betty said is, there's been some religious dogma that has had its repercussion, and its detriment to how we've been severed from our true selves because we believed that we had to find God outside of ourselves. But she said, actually, the most detrimental has been kind of what's happened in the Western world, most especially, is like when we went way too far into science and that you're just matter and, you're going to die and that's it. And she said that's actually had the biggest detriment to humanity because that is like the furthest away from home. And how our roots are really in both mysticism and science. It's both, but it's not, again, right brain, left brain. So just notice, how have you severed yourself from parts of yourself? How can you integrate both more? And you might have to test and question your beliefs and your views and what you've been told and what you believe to be true. And a really good, signifier is, do you need logic and proof for everything? Are you afraid if it's not proven? That might mean you're a little bit too heavy on the left side of your brain. That's okay. It's not your fault. That's what, it's been indoctrinated into us. But come back to center and come back and lean into the right brain. Start doing more art. Go spend more time in nature. Do things without aim or purpose. Let yourself dive into the mystery of not knowing. Get comfortable with not knowing. Go into the shadow parts. Get to know what are the qualities of feminine and masculine, and notice what parts am I unfamiliar with that I need to refamiliarize myself with. And how do I create the dance and the integration of both? Not vilifying one and glorifying the other, but honoring and respecting both. There was this beautiful image in this YouTube video where it was like two faces, the feminine and the masculine, the woman and the man, and they come together and it creates a face. So you basically see three faces, but it's all integrated as one. And it was such a beautiful symbol to me of like, you can't really fully have the form until both are integrated. You can't see the face until both faces are a part of that third face. And this to me is also the third entity, which could come into all aspects, of relationship. When two people come together, they create the third entity, or even that point of, our experience being witnessed, or the third point, which is like the divine point of the other aspects of ourselves. All of it is about integration right now. That's part of the remembering, is all of it is about integration. So just notice what parts feel outside of you, what part feels unfamiliar, and how can you begin to be curious about them and bring yourself into integration. Further in and further up. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. As always, take it or leave it as feels right for you, and loving you from afar. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.